welcome everyone to a cozy live stream. We had a debate about whether or not it was appropriate to wear kind of like a holiday sweater at this point, and the decision was that because Canadian Thanksgiving has already happened, it is completely appropriate to wear this. So that is what we ended up deciding is fine. Yes, it is Pusheen. Very exciting. This was actually a birthday present to myself, and my birthday is in July, so I've had no opportunities to wear it despite wanting it for several years. I do agree that Pusheen is always appropriate, is appropriate in all seasons. The reason I wanted this one so bad, besides the fact that it's like super soft and adorable, is that it is so hard to find a holiday sweater that isn't explicitly Christmassy. And I like, it's, you know, fits my color aesthetic and everything. I wanted to make all my dollar sweaters with my cats on it, but I just don't think I have a large enough audience to pay the amount that it would take to make like high quality sweaters, because I just have to have, they'd be like $60 a piece, and I don't know that many people that want to buy $60 sweaters. How are folks tonight? I love how I just opened by talking about products I want to make. But how are folks doing? The live stream got rescheduled at the last minute last week, so we are talking about last week's topic. But because it turned out that Biden said more about things this week, so the topic is essentially what is going on? Like, what is going to happen with the economy under a Biden presidency if we actually manage to have one of those? I did notice that because I mentioned Biden in this, I got, like, if you look on YouTube, there's, like, a flag that's, like, the election has been called for Biden, so they don't want me out here pretending like Trump has won the election, although I will say he's really trying to sow some doubt. Everyone is doing preliminary holiday decor dress this year due to COVID isolation. Yeah, I read a Twitter thread the other day where folks were discussing this, and folks in the UK were like, oh yeah, we started like a month ago in the UK because you just like lights, we need anything happy that we can get. I will say that I always was like kind of bitter at all the holiday stuff because one, I worked retail and it's just a crazy time of year. And the other problem that I had with it was like the mass forcing of religious kind of holiday on everybody else. However, I have come around to the idea that I enjoy that everybody's kind of on a page of coziness and celebration, and so I just try to find secular ways, and I am also 100% on board with lights because I live somewhere where it gets dark at 4 p.m. It's completely pitch black by the time I get off work, and it feels like pajama time before I'm even done with my job for the day. So, oh, that's what it is. I saw it, I was confused and was like, is Lily gonna tell us to Google it? Oh, are you talking about the alert? Yeah, I think this is like they're too little too late trying to fight misinformation on YouTube. Brianna says, we put up the Christmas tree after Halloween. Man, that is early. JU says, you make it, we buy it. Isn't that how fandoms work? Yes, but you have to consider if you have a large enough audience. I wouldn't describe myself as having a fandom. I have to figure out if I have a large enough audience to justify both the minimum quantity and, like, you know, it's like a higher priced item. I tend to have lower priced items that I do sell. So it just isn't the year for it. It isn't the year, frankly, for $60 holiday sweaters, no matter how ethically made or adorable they are. It just isn't. It just isn't. Oro, aka Be Queer Make Stuff, is sewing buttonholes, which is pretty appropriate given the name. Also, I'm a little late on this, but congrats, Oro, on hitting 1,000 YouTube subscribers. That's very exciting. Brianna says, it's not a fandom until there's fan fiction. Oh my god, please no fan fiction. That's how I know that I'm still, like, if I'm still predominantly a consumer of fan fiction and it isn't being written about me, then this is good. I'm in stealth mode. This is the ideal thing. Oh, 500. You hit 500, not 1,000. 600 is great. Hey, I've been between 400 and 500 YouTube subscribers for like a year, so I think I'm 13 away from 500. But one has to make actual YouTube videos to gain subscribers. This is a fact of truth. My channel hits its 14th anniversary on Christmas this year. I don't know what I was doing on Christmas 2006. I think I was off of work. I worked that year. I worked at I was like a dishwasher in a fancy department store, and I'm pretty sure we closed for Christmas that year. But apparently, I created a YouTube channel that day, so I really feel like I should at least post one more video before my YouTube channel's 14th birthday on Christmas. So we'll see. I told my husband, as far as I was concerned, he could take it down the day after Thanksgiving and put up the Christmas stuff at the same time. Efficiency. That seems good. You still have your Halloween stuff up? I mean, Halloween stuff it's a good vibe. It's my favorite holiday because it's like pretty, at least the way it's celebrated out here, pretty aggressively non-religious, and all it is about is candy, walking around your neighborhood and meeting your neighbors, and costumes. And I guess spooky stuff. People are really into the spooky stuff. I'm like less into the spooky stuff. But Pixie Dust will take a holiday snuggle. Well, I'm sending you snuggles through the screen. What is on your mug? I'm trying to figure out the design. It is a cat mug that my friend Nagisa brought me back from Japan. It's super cute. Look how cute it is. We were just discussing how I'd like to get another cat mug. Ideally one that, like, matches the aesthetic better. We had hoped to do Oh My Dollar mugs with a local company this year, but quite frankly, it took too long to pick which cat design to do, and she is now stocked up for orders. And so we may do them later. It might be a New Year's thing. I'm a little disappointed. We do have like mugs on the Oh My Dollar site, but these were going to be my favorite mugs that I have, local, sandblasted, really great all around. But yes, there is a lot of Pusheen stuff going on Latitude. We do have one really cool one that's like Kitty Star budget, and it's a magic color changing mug. So it starts out black, and then like when you make hot tea in it or whatever, or you put a hot beverage in it, then he like appears. It's pretty cool. So yeah, there's like 2 Pusheen coasters here. I don't have a problem. Everything's fine. My philosophy is that if you can get something Pusheen that you're gonna use anyway, might as well get it as Pusheen, because all of their stuff is really great quality, and like all of their shirts are super soft, and it's always cute. So, and their aesthetics really match all of my other stuff. So Latitude says this is the best stream of the year. Yes, and all their dresses have pockets. That is also a really good key element. I don't usually buy their stuff. I try not to buy very much clothing new at all, but I stock it on Poshmark and Mercari and stuff like that. So we have a lot of Pusheen stuff in this house, like quite a lot. Erin has a Pusheen pencil case holder with like, it's Pusheen Acorn actually, so it has like a little Pusheen rainbow tail, and it is alarmingly cute. And every time it's like out just because Erin is using the pens in it, I'm always like, oh my gosh, look how cute the little Pusheen is. It isn't the year is the theme of the year. Yeah, I know. Like there were a lot of like products this year that I was hopeful that it just really didn't feel like the year. It didn't really feel like the year to push a lot of I don't sell anything that's really essential. I would say I sell one thing that I think is truly helpful, which is my book, and I also give away a lot of the books. Most of the other stuff I sell is like stuff that's nice, but it's tea and stickers and mugs and stuff like that, not stuff people need. And it just didn't feel like something I wanted to put a lot of energy towards this year, even though we do donate like a percentage of Oh My Dollar revenue to charities, and theoretically I could donate more if I made more stuff. But I don't know, it's not, I don't like to drive consumerism based on the idea that I'll donate money. Like I would rather just donate money because I like to donate money. So I would never get anything done if I lived in your apartment because everything Pusheen would distract me with the cuteness. I think we've like normalized to a lot of it, but I do have a lot of very good things. Pixie Dust says, I can highly recommend Pusheen corn slippers. Those slippers, I can't handle big poofy stickers. I need things, I need them, these are gonna reveal just how like beat up these are, but I need like this style of slipper. These are the ones I'm wearing, but yeah, look how bad they are on the bottom. These were definitely from Primark. I bought them when I was living in London because I don't wear shoes in the house, but the house was not that clean in the flat I was living in London. So I had slippers to wear around the flat, and I bought them for like $3 at Primark. But I don't like the slippers that like run into each other. It's fine. Pixie Dust was like, don't. It's fine that they look that way on the bottom. I've thought about getting new ones, but like I don't wear them out of the house, so why does it matter? They do their purpose, which is that they keep my feet slightly warmer than socks do. Well, than socks alone. I just realized I also have Pusheen socks on. I didn't even realize that. How is it comfortable? Well, they don't have a lot of tread otherwise, so it's not like, yeah. Anyway, I'm supposed to be selling my own merch, not Pusheen. Is that actually the point of a stream? I think the point of the stream is to tell people about Joe Biden's policies. I will show off the donut for today. We have a donut light now, just so you know. I thought that I hadn't tried this one before, but I have tried it already, so I'm sorry. It is the sticky toffee bear claw. I genuinely thought I hadn't tried it. But, it kind of fits the, like, cozy animal theme of today's stream. I don't know. I'm trying to justify it. I had a different one last week that I reviewed on Insta Stories since we canceled the stream last minute. So, where is the blue lamp from? This is from Amazon, I believe. I bought it a bunch of years ago. All right. Okay, let's talk about Biden's economic policies before we get into the donuts. It's not really today in the stream. It's that this is the stuff that these are the color schemes of my life. It's just the sweater really ties it all together. Oh yeah, that's because when I got that camera, I obviously had to get a tiny sleeve for it to make it a cuter color. Why would that not be true? I have another pink camera too. No, I have two other pink cameras. I don't have a problem. Everything's fine. Okay, so what is going on with Biden economic policies? He has 4 focuses on his transition website right now. And there are 2 that are kind of most relevant, I would say, to economic policy and our personal finances. One of them is racial justice, and that is extremely related because generational wealth building has a lot to do with racial inequality in this country. It's obviously not the only part of it, but systemic lack of access to capital, to lending, to just wealth transfer between generations is part of the reason that Black households have, on average, 20 times less of a net worth than white households in the United States. And so the racial equality part of his kind of 4 pillars and racial justice on Biden's platform is informative of what he is going to do with the economic resiliency part of his platform. And the economic resiliency part of his platform is annoyingly vague. So it's economic recovery, and it's essentially being like, okay, well, I've inherited a really terrible economy. What are we going to do? There's a couple things that we are fairly certain will happen. If 2020 has taught us anything, is that you can't be certain about anything. But there is a couple things that have happened that are not really linked to Biden, but will inform Biden's policies. One, the Federal Reserve said that they were committed to keeping the prime interest rate at 0% through 2023. The prime interest rate is sort of it's the interest rate that is used. The Federal Reserve interest rate is the interest rate that banks use to lend money to one another. So it being at 0% means that other interest rates stay low. Does it affect you in your everyday life? It can. It will mean that things like mortgages are very likely to stay low. It also means that we are likely to see relatively low inflation over the next couple years. And that's inflation overall. That's not inflation for individual goods. So obviously we've seen spikes in the cost of certain things in the past year, toilet paper, supply chain issues with groceries, but the overall basket of goods that measures the cost of a bunch of different things in the average person's wallet, that inflation will stay low, because essentially the federal interest rate and the inflation rate go fairly hand in hand. The downside is that because we already have this 0% interest rate, it means that there's less tools for Biden to kind of work with and toggle in economic recovery, because lowering the interest rates is a way that you can stimulate growth. But we've already lowered it to 0 and it's going to stay there. So we have less toggles. And what we have to do then instead is expand the monetary supply. And expanding the monetary supply is something that Biden is almost definitely going to do. Biden in the Obama White House, he was essentially in charge of budgetary controls. He said his big regret about what happened during the Obama economic recovery, TARP bailouts, all of those things, was that they switched to austerity a little too quickly. So the austerity is when the government essentially restricts budgets and starts trying to clamp down on government spending in order to prevent hyperinflation, the interest rates from going too high, and then inflation from going too high, right? So you have to slowly raise the interest rate in order to, limit the monetary supply a little bit. These are the kind of like pillars of macroeconomics. And one of the things that Biden said that he did was that they clamped down austerity a little too quickly in the recovery. And so it's very likely that under a Biden administration, we will see a much more, we're going to see economic expansion done by federal spending, which is pretty normal, right? Like, that's what happens when Democrats are in power generally in this country, is the tax and spend liberal, so to speak, which is that they love spending money. The irony being that Democrats have actually balanced the budget and gotten rid of the debt more often than Republicans, but the party line is that they like to tax and spend. So, yes, it is very Keynesian, extremely Keynesian. And I could go deep into the difference between Keynes and Austrian economics, but we're gonna stay away from Keynes today. But John Maynard Keynes is the father of modern macroeconomics, so to speak, and that is what Keynes's philosophy, which you can read about in the book called The Wealth of Nations, which is pretty much the Bible for modern macro. It's how almost all countries control their economy. I would say even among countries that have very different political systems from the United States, the modern macroeconomics is pretty universal in the types of levers that they have. The mechanisms by which you can pull these levers are different depending on how your country is organized, right? So it's a lot easier for the Chinese government to stimulate government spending because such a large percentage of their economy is state controlled. But it's a lot harder for them to restrict monetary supply or expand monetary supply because their currency is not heavily traded outside of their country. The US dollar is the most traded currency in the world, and it is the world reserve currency. So we have a lot more opportunities to start spending more money because we can just issue treasury bonds because people will buy them, which I've talked about plenty in other things. So what does this mean for your personal finances? Well, there's a couple things. One, we are probably less likely to see the cost of basic goods other than food, because there are supply chain issues, but things that you locally consume are unlikely to rise a bunch in the coming years. So housing, something that has experienced this huge rise in cost in the past 5 to 10 years, or 20 years if you really want to say, as a proportion of overall income, housing is unlikely to tick up. And we're particularly seeing this because we're seeing all the ways that coronavirus has rearranged the economy. So you're unlikely to see housing rise. You're also unlikely to see transport costs rise necessarily because in addition to gas prices being historically low because of lower demand, it's going to take a while for that demand to come back, and hopefully we're going to restructure the economy in a better way. One of the other things that we're going to see is we are likely going to see government spending in transportation. And that is because transportation infrastructure building is, one, it's popular with everyone. It's popular with both Republicans and Democrats. It's also a very, how should I say this? It's very advantageous for legislators because these are huge contracts that go to companies, and so there's a lot of ways to get wins for your local economy for Congress people. So these bills, these transportation omnibus infrastructure bills, when they do pass, they are loaded with pork, so to speak, simply because they are really working very hard to be oh, we're going to get a new stretch of highway, or we're going to get a new train in my district, or I get a lot of money from this large contractor that builds highways, and therefore I want this in this bill. So yeah. Does it apply to gasoline too? Oh, it looks like I already answered that. But yeah, fuel costs I expect to stay extremely low. The thing about crude oil, which is what drives fuel costs, is that crude oil has more factors than just the global economy and supply and demand going into its price, because so much of fuel creation and supply is based on geopolitical issues. So you see that a lot of the fuel in the world comes out of countries with highly state-controlled economies and countries that are in land conflicts. So because so much of it does come from the Middle East and from Saharan Africa, essentially it comes from near the equator, and then it comes from coastal lines, and those tend to be the areas that have a lot of land conflicts in the world. So sometimes the price of crude oil is influenced by things that are other than just typical supply and demand. So that's a thing to understand. The other really interesting thing about fuel supply and price is that low crude oil costs, make infrastructure projects relatively cheap. And that is because so much oil is required in the creation of new highways, new roads, because that's what asphalt is made out of. It's made out of oil. And so when the oil costs go down, the cost of construction goes down, and essentially they're able to get more bang for their buck. And that is good when it comes to infrastructure projects, because if the raw inputs are lower and cheaper, that means you can spend more on labor. And guess what labor does? It boosts the economy. We all want jobs right now, right? So that is one of the big things. So we expect to see that because climate change is such a large part of Joe Biden's platform as well. We really don't know how the infrastructure projects are going to shape out. We do know that he loves Amtrak, and so the possibility that we do see a lot more expansion in train kind of, a sane modern day rail system for transport. I would love to see it. I don't really know if that's just like hope springs eternal. So, someone said something about a DOT. Let me know. DOT is Department of Transport. And most states have a state DOT, although it might have a slightly different name. And then there is the US DOT. And in Portland, we have a PDOT, which we now call PBOT. But, and almost all of the money that goes to state DOTs actually flows through the federal government. And so while they are extremely important projects, that money that they put into infrastructure projects will eventually flow through state government. So one of the problems that we see a lot of time with these infrastructure projects is they get held up in state governments with whatever the state politics are going on. So, rather than being like, oh, we're going to build a high-speed rail from California to Seattle or something like that, what ends up happening is the states can't agree on what they want, or there's a complaint from one part of the state, which is usually a rural part of the state versus kind of the urban part of the state, is what happens in most parts of the United States, where there's this like very large divide in the state legislature, and that stuff can get tied up. The other thing to know about infrastructure projects is in the United States, they do not happen quickly. We are not China. We do not build high-speed rail in 6 months. And they go through a lot of process. They go through a lot of environmental review. And so infrastructure spending can boost the economy now, but infrastructure building will not mean that we immediately get these things that we want. So PA has PennDOT. That's kind of a funny one. Yes, I know. I illustrated a bunch of like little stickers when they kind of started being known by PBOT that were little robot stickers. I don't think I have any of those anymore. Your state DOT overspent the past year by $743 million. Oh my God, was that federal money? That's really bananas. That's so much money. I will say that's like, I was going to say like the numbers are really big when it comes to transportation spending, but that's really high. That's not like, I can't be like, oh yeah, that's pretty high. That also could just be one project. What I will say is highways are really expensive. I'm not even going to get into the State Highway Trust Fund because I could geek out on that, but that doesn't really affect your everyday life that much. It's kind of like more of a long range thing. It's going broke. That's all you really need to know. Okay, so we expect to see significant economic recovery that is pushed, recovery policy that is pushed by expanding spending. We know that we are going to see goods that are local probably not inflate much. So what are the other Joe Biden policies that might affect you personally? There's a couple ones, and the big one that is of debate and was hot this week is student loan forgiveness. So on Monday, Biden expressed that he is going to include student loan forgiveness as part of his economic recovery policy. That being said, how much his economic recovery is going to be, his student loan forgiveness as part of the economic recovery is not well defined. So Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer are pushing for $10,000 worth of student loan forgiveness per person to be included as part of it. Joe Biden had expressed that the HEROES Act that did not pass, the HEROES Act was the second round to the CARES Act. It was the coronavirus relief bill that the Democrats put forward and passed and never got through the Republicans. And the HEROES Act included $10,000 of student loan relief. So what we kind of know is that $10,000 appears to be his kind of minimum. There's a couple arguments against this. So first off, like, who would this apply to, regardless of what the number is? So it will only probably apply to federally backed loans or federally held loans. So almost all private student loans are federally backed, which means that essentially you can't get rid of them in bankruptcy. And that's part of the reason they let you borrow so much money, is because the government is on the hook if you don't pay back, which is, I think, not a great system. Because it lets people take out massive amounts of debt when they are 18 years old and they have no idea. And I'm not anti-student loan debt. I don't think it doesn't make you a bad person to have it. I don't think it even makes it a bad decision. There are a lot of ways in which student loans have changed people's economic outcomes. But we have a huge inflation in the cost of education in this country, and we also have these free-flowing federal student loans. So there are huge benefits to doing this for the economy if we were to forgive student loans. The benefits are that it would most likely be regressive, because the people with the highest amount of student loans in this country have the most wealth. The highest student loan balances are usually people that went to graduate school, and of the total student loans out there, 56% of them are held by people that went to graduate or professional school, who classically have higher income. And so the idea is that, well, why should we do this thing when more of rich people are going to get more of the money overall? The other thing is, if you go for something as low as $10,000, it's going to cost the government a lot, but it may not have an outsized impact on the actual recovery of the economy. It could feel huge to people personally, but it won't necessarily stimulate spending, right? If you think about a lot of people's student loan debts, if you don't do anything to fix the structural problems with the system, which is these insanely high interest rates, so the current student loan interest rate is 7.8%, and it can go up to 12.4% if you have a plus loan, which is what graduates get, or family members will get if for their kids. And not even to mention private student loans, is just the federal ones. And those loans are like, the cost of education has gone up a lot. And then on top of that, we have these rapidly compounding student loans with this interest. So a lot of people will be paying on these student loans for years, and they've only paid off the interest. So the balance is growing and growing and growing. And we're thinking about the fact that the federal loan interest rate right now is 0%. And that interest is, they were saying the Fed rate is going to stay that low for till 2023. Yet you can't borrow money for education, which is supposed to improve our economic outcomes, especially your individual economic outcome, at anything lower than 8.6%, which is one of the reasons that we saw so many people that got screwed in the last recession, where they ended up deciding that they were going to borrow against their, parents that wanted to help their kids go to college, that took out home equity lines of credit or second mortgages on their house to help their kids pay for college, because that debt can be forgiven by bankruptcy, unlike student loans in this country, and that debt came at a way lower interest rate, right? So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are like, well, if you don't fix the system, it isn't going to have that much of an impact. One of the reasons why this is part of an economic recovery bill is obviously student loan debt is debilitating for a lot of people. And while majority of the debt is held by rich people, the people that would have the largest effect on their own personal finances, who are the engine of the economy. They are workers, that middle class and lower income workers. Guess what? Those people, if you forgive even $10,000 of student loans, that would be life-changing to them, right? So when people have more money to spend, the economy does better, as I've talked about ad nauseum on this show, is that the economy is driven by consumer spending. So if people have more money to spend, then the economy does better. And we can make all sorts of criticisms about late-stage capitalism and why it isn't necessarily great that we have entirely a consumer-driven economy for the environment and lots of other reasons. That being said, from a very simple measure of the economy, we do know that if people have more money to spend, the economy does better. So, has he said what types of student loans, i.e. Perkins versus other types? So currently the only thing that he has said is that that he has given no specifics. What we can assume based on what we looked at with student loan relief, which was not forgiveness, but the relief that is going on right now, which is that student loans have no payments due and have 0% interest now until, not new student loans, but existing student loans are not accruing interest. And that ends at the end of this year. So what we know about that is that only applies to federal student loans. But Perkins and other kinds of loans would be included in that. It would just need to be the federally issued ones as opposed to federally backed private loans. There's a possibility they do this for private loans. What I will say is that private student loans are terrible. They can often be really, really agonizingly awful. And they usually, though, qualify for way less programs. So if this was structured similar to how other student loan programs like public service loan forgiveness, things like that, are structured, then it is very unlikely that we would see them apply to private student loans. My loans are spread out over 3 lenders, so if I could pick which ones to forgive, that'd be nice. Yeah, I know. It's very frustrating that we have very little information about how this would work. I mean, we don't have an amount. Everything that has been proposed has been per person versus per loan, which is very interesting because almost all other loan forgiveness, public service loan forgiveness, Perkins cancellation, all of those programs are done by loan. So you can get public service loan forgiveness, but it's not based on you. It's based on each of the loans that you have that qualify for it. You can get Perkins cancellation, but it only applies to Perkins loans, which is Perkins cancellation is pretty cool. It's for teachers, and they cancel a percentage of your debt for each of the 5 years that you work in a public institution. And it's a different percentage each year, but at the end, all of your Perkins loans are gone. So, would the student loan forgiveness plans that are being talked about affect individuals' taxes? I'm thinking along the line of other types of student loan forgiveness. So, what has been proposed and in the HEROES Act is that it would not affect income taxes, because that is one of the things that extremely sucks about the current situation with student loan forgiveness, is that student loan forgiveness, like public service loan forgiveness, not Perkins cancellation, interestingly enough, public service loan forgiveness, and even I did AmeriCorps, and I got an educational award that I had to use on college, but it was taxed as income to me in the year that I used it, and it was taxed at a higher rate than it was taxed at 10% regardless of what my income was that year, even though my income was very low, which I found very upsetting. But so what they're talking about is that it would not be that way. It would not be counted as income in the year they use it. I will say they do manage to do that with military. So there are different military programs that have happened in and out, and depending on what branch you're in, and different kinds of active service versus reserves, all of those things. But there's also obviously the GI Bill. So different kinds of military loan forgiveness does not have that income tax hit. So it is possible to structure it that way. We really do have to think, I think if the United States wants to change the economic outlook for people with student loans, and really changed personal financial outlooks, they have to really think creatively and think beyond the way that we've been doing it, because the system is broken. And that doesn't mean that student loans are bad. That doesn't mean that I think they shouldn't exist. They actually do create economic opportunity for people. That being said, the way that we've structured them, the way that we've given them out, the way that we've federally backed them, it is very different than almost any other country in the world. And it has led to the rapid inflation of the cost of education in this country. There is every possible link between the two. And the reason college is so expensive in the United States and that people end up with these really high student loan balances that cripple them for a long time, not to say to cripple them, that hurt their finances for a long time, it is because of the way that we structured the system. So I think if they want to make real change, I am very worried, based on what I've read, is that Biden is, it seems like Biden is feeling less ambitious about the $50,000 student loan forgiveness than like Warren and Schumer and a lot of the other, so to speak, more to the left candidates. One of the narratives that I think is just exhausting to talk about, but this idea that, like, is it fair if people get these student loans forgiven when other people work to pay them off? And I don't really care personally. I think, is it fair that anybody should have to take out these loans at such high rates? No. And there's an argument to be made for this is going to help higher income people maybe more as far as numbers than it is going to help lower income people. That being said, as far as personal financial safety, it's much more likely to have a larger impact on lower income people and lower middle class people than it is on those upper income folks. So that's the question. I would say that's a question, but there's a never-ending list of questions. That being said, he did make a verbal commitment on Monday to student loan forgiveness being part of the package that he is going to unveil. There's a couple other things up in the air right now. One that is huge for people, pandemic unemployment assistance, which is what freelancers, gig workers, and it is also what is extending qualifying for unemployment. So, normal unemployment in most states outside of pandemic times is 26 weeks. It's not always 100% true. And what happened with the CARES Act, which was the original and the only coronavirus relief act, was that they essentially gave money to extend it to 52 weeks. And that ends the day after Christmas. So it ends on December 26th. And there are a lot of people that are going to have no income. It's not even that they are not going to get that extra $500 a week. As we know, industries are getting shut down again. We just had a huge jump last week in the number of people filing for unemployment and doing first-time claims. So, and that's because we're seeing economies shut down because we're in the darkest days of the pandemic right now in the United States. Especially in my state that never saw an early surge, we're seeing now, the graph just goes up, and every day the United States is breaking the previous day's records for new cases pretty much right now. So we are seeing increased lockdowns. We're even seeing them in states that kind of really didn't have them before. And that has an effect. That has an effect on people's ability to get work, right? And there were a lot of people who went back to work, and then within weeks they are now unemployed again. So, and not to mention a lot of small business owners that have no income right now and were previously relying on pandemic unemployment assistance to pay themselves while they're out of work. So something is going to have to be done to extend that. And also at the end of the year, before Biden actually officially comes into office, is when the student loan kind of forgiveness expires. The good news about this student loan forgiveness situation is that Biden can do it by himself. So this can be done by executive order. This doesn't require congressional action. And there's a lot of political criticisms about like the constant use of executive orders. But what I will say is that this is actually under the purview of the executive branch and doesn't need to be done congressionally. And so that would, I don't know, potentially be very good. Anybody have any other questions about how things might change personal finance wise under Biden, like what we know thus far? I will say I was a little disappointed in how little concrete stuff is up there right now on the transition website. That being said, you know, I cobbled things together from a lot of sources to try to figure out what is going on. So that's what we have thus far. Is there a new stimulus check? No one has any idea. That's Congress, so. No one has questions? I guess we'll do the donut now. Let's do the donut, and if people have more questions. I think my donut light died. But here is the bear claw. I already showed it. It's okay. Don't worry about getting a donut light. Oh, it's very important to have a donut light. Okay, this is the sticky toffee bear claw, and I did have this on another stream. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it. I forgot that this was like one of my favorite donuts. It was an incredible donut. Maybe that's what was going on in my brain when I thought I hadn't had it. It just like was like, no, I want another one of those. So this is what I really want to capture. Like the inside of the donut is also, it's like dripping everywhere. Donut nuts. But it's like this super incredible, it's kind of a cinnamon roll. I would describe it as like, that's the goop that you get in between the layers of a cinnamon roll, but it's like harder. It's less gooey, but yeah, it's just this incredible inside. It doesn't bother me that you're repeating donuts as long as it's not the everything bagel. Well, what I will say is that there's other donuts I haven't had yet. I just couldn't remember. This is such a good donut. I like that they shaped it like a bear claw too. It's very, it's got that doughy inside texture as opposed to the like super fluffy. Do you want to take a, you don't want that whole piece, I'm sure. All right, I'm going to try it with some of the almonds actually on it. Frankly, surprised and disappointed you don't keep a donut spreadsheet. I am now too. Why did I not think of that? Does Biden have the full transition access now? No. I might have to go backwards engineer a donut spreadsheet. Yep. This is pretty much just a cinnamon roll, but like, yeah, it's really good. You can see there's a little air pocket in the top. But yeah, I would say it's probably the closest to a cinnamon roll that I've had. What is toffee, technically? I don't really know what toffee is. I know. I can just go back and look at the YouTube. I will tell you, some of my coworkers loved that everything donut. I don't know what to do. They have a savory donut this month, and I was thinking about trying it. It's called a Monte Cristo. It's based on some sort of sandwich. Aaron, do you want to look up what's in the Monte Cristo donut? Has someone heard of a Monte Cristo? Am I getting that right?
Turkey cheese glazed jalapeno. What?
Okay. It has vegan turkey, vegan cream cheese. What else?
Inside a French toast glazed donut.
Inside a French toast glazed donut.
And then cranberry jalapeno jam on top.
And then cranberry jalapeno jam on top. Should I try that, or is that going to fall apart? It's a ham and cheese sandwich that is then dipped in an egg batter and pan fried. Do I need to try this? What if it's just as bad as the everything bagel? Maybe it won't be because I'm not expecting it to taste a certain way. All right. Well, maybe I'll try it. I hate to give you all the bad news. This only affects me, but as someone who gets a donut every week, I do slowly fill up my buy 10 donuts, get one free card. Maybe it's buy 12, get one free. But they stopped they stopped taking the cards because they're paper cards during the original kind of lockdown. And they're entirely like a takeout place, but they like wanted to minimize, no cash, no blah, blah, blah. But then I last week bought a paper gift certificate because it occurred to me that I should just buy a gift certificate rather than putting a certain amount on the credit card each week because I only buy one donut. So I spend like $2 to $4, including tip, like per week. And it's a little ridiculous. And I have to save all those receipts too because it's a business expense for me. So it's like unnecessary. And it's costing them more in exchange fees. So I finally was like, oh, I can get a gift certificate. And I got that last week. I finally just thought of this galaxy brain idea to get this gift certificate. And I got it last week. And now they're accepting this gift certificate because it doesn't really feel fair to them to not. But they're not doing punches on the cards again because we're in like new lockdown or something. They are intended to be eaten with jam. Toffee is when you put a shot of espresso in your tea. I don't think that's correct. Does no one know what toffee is? All right. I will get that donut next week because I think that might be the last week that they have it. That's also thematic because next week is Thanksgiving week, so. Crunchy caramel. Oh, that would explain why I don't really know what it is. Because caramel is rarely vegan, so. Brown sugar, butter, and cream. Okay, well, that's what's inside of a cinnamon roll. So do cinnamon rolls technically have coffee in them? Or toffee in them? Got me thinking that it was coffee. So, is that, like... Caramel is rarely vegan? Well, when it's in the, like, when you get it in a store or something, right? Like when you get, like, caramel candies and stuff like that, yeah, they're usually made with, some sort of dairy. I think of toffee as being very sticky. Like stuff that gets stuck to your teeth. It is hard to get out. But this was great. It's like, yeah. It doesn't reach hardball sugar stage in the cinnamon roll. So really my criticism is I don't think this was a toffee. I don't think this was a toffee bear claw. I think it was a cinnamon roll bear claw. Because it would need to be like hard. You're thinking like caramel syrup. Caramel at Starbucks, I believe, was one of the two syrups that wasn't vegan. Am I right? Ooh, don't quote me on that now. But you can look it up in the Starbucks app. Say in my Starbucks customer service voice, where my voice goes up a pitch. That was one of my favorite parts about like working the counter at the mall was that I could answer questions about what was and wasn't vegan at Starbucks very confidently. Yeah, pumpkin spice is not vegan. Although I had an alternative order that I could make that would like essentially mimic the pumpkin spice for people. It's pretty easy to like mix two of the. You could do the toffee nut. Oh yeah, toffee nut syrup is vegan at Starbucks, which is obviously that's the for all flavors Starbucks is the arbiter of whether or not they're vegan. But the toffee nut was vegan, and so I would make the toffee nut with people, and then we would sprinkle cinnamon on the top, and it hit. It didn't taste exactly like pumpkin spice, but it hit the same spot for folks. So taffy is soft, toffee is crunchy. Oh my god, so complicated. Just because caramel syrup doesn't have butter or cream as a necessary ingredient didn't mean they throw in casein or whey or whatever just to make it non-vegan and just to annoy us. Yeah, correct. Well, and it does normally have dairy in it, right? It has butter in it. So caramel, toffee, whatever are all basic. What is the whatever there, Emily? Are all basically the same thing at different stages in their lifespan with or without cream. I believe that. I know you said don't quote you, but I just quoted you. And I believe it. Yeah. It's basically the exact same stuff my dentist used to mold my mouth guard, but caramel flavored. Someone ages ago asked a question about capital gains taxes under Biden. He has not said anything specifically on his transition website, but it does sound like there will be capital gains reform. What that looks like, we do not know. This is actually one of the areas where I think the Biden tax plan line that happened a lot. So one of the big things was that like during the debates and during the campaign, Biden kept saying, my plan won't raise your taxes unless you make over $400,000, which is, obviously at that point, we don't care if we raise your taxes. That being said, I think one of the things that is important or maybe a little disingenuous about what he said is that if there is capital gains reform, that will likely raise overall taxes paid for people below a certain amount of, below $400,000, but that are more upper class. Capital gains taxes do not affect middle class people generally. Upper middle class people maybe, that I would consider to be rich, but they might still call themselves middle class. The definition of a middle class is something that we all struggle to define in the world of economics and in the world of politics. But the capital gains taxes can affect people that are sort of in that, $90,000 income to $200,000 range, let's say, because it's more likely they have a larger percentage of their assets than someone with a lower income that might be affected by capital gains tax reform. And what capital gains tax reform is essentially that capital gains are taxed at a way lower rate than income. And it's just a way for rich people to avoid paying taxes, pretty much. And that's my unbiased opinion. And so what capital gains tax reform would do is that it would increase that rate to more, one of the more common proposals is that it would more closely mimic the progressive tax system that we have now, where, over a certain amount that you make is taxed at higher and higher rates. So it would be tied more closely to income from work. And one of the reasons that this is it's uncontroversial among people that work for a living, because it's kind of outrageous that if you make most of your wealth and your assets from holding on to financial assets and from growth in financial assets, that you are taxed at a lower rate than someone that works hard for their money at a job. And so, one of the Warren Buffett, who's one of the richest men in the world, and very liberal, he was saying it's absolutely ridiculous that his secretary, who makes $50,000 a year, pays a higher tax rate than he does, because the majority of his wealth is comes from, interest on his own assets. So chat miseducates Lily about random things. Oh, we're still on the caramel thing. But yes, capital gains and caramel. That's where we're at. Capital gains and caramel is actually another show that I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep taking finance terms and adding random foods to them. Y'all, I just want to tell you, this is like the softest sweater ever. If I make an Oh My Dollar holiday sweater ever, if that ever actually ends up happening, I want it to be as soft as this sweater. Candy in general is not chocolate, is just heated sugar plus stuff. I mean, that's correct, right? Oh. Wait, what has become a thing is that you tell me things that aren't true in the chat? Yeah. I believe the chat anytime they tell me things about food or like regional dialects for things. So oh, caramel is a vegetable. I'd forgotten about the whole is a vegetable thing. Oh. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour, so if nobody has any more questions about Biden tax stuff, then how about folks tell me what they're looking forward to this week? I had like a really hard week this week, so all I'm looking forward to is this week being better than last week, which I set the bar extremely low last week, so that's what I'm looking forward to. Although I think a lot of people have like a 3-day week at work if you're in the United States. So that will hopefully be exciting. I hope for anyone that works grocery that you live through this week. This is typically the hardest week in grocery stores. I know from experience. So if you do work grocery or liquor, Godspeed to you this week. Please just hold on. You're almost done. You're almost through. So, oh, Amanda's birthday is tomorrow. You have time off for Thanksgiving. That's pretty awesome. Does that like kind of happens most years for you? That's true. So Thanksgiving is a floating holiday for people that don't know. It's always the last Thursday. Oro has not finished the buttonhole, so we can't be done yet. Okay, well, we'll keep vamping. How close are you to the end of the buttonholes, Oro? This is what's important to know. Denise complimented the sweater on me. Thank you. I'm like very pleased with this sweater. I think this is an extra small, and I'm really glad I listened to the advice that it runs big, because I would have normally gotten a small because it's my normal size, and this is perfect cozy, but I think anything bigger would have been a little too oversized. Also, it gives me sweater paws like everything I own does, unless I get it in petite sizing. So, Amanda, this is the first year I've had a grown-up person job, so it's hard to say if I normally get time off. Fair enough. Well, usually, what do you normally do? You previously have had service jobs, right? So, like, yeah, I guess that's hard. But happy birthday, Amanda. I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving and then to the next day when I'm going to work, but no one else in my area will be there, and it will be so quiet. I'm actually working on Thanksgiving morning. So I work remote, so, quiet is kind of relative. But I'm working on Thanksgiving morning because I have, like, stuff I need to do when there, like, aren't any tickets coming in or anything. And also, I unexpectedly used PTO on Monday last week, and we don't have a lot of PTO days or holiday sick days at my job. I mean, we have a lot more than 0, which is how many I've had at a lot of jobs, but it can get really hard to balance it because I use most of my PTO to do all my dollar stuff. So I'm taking the Friday off, but only half the Thursday. I'm taking the Friday off to ship packages. So this is how I use my PTO, is to work on all my dollar. So all my Pusheen secondhand sweaters are extra small and they fit like mediums. I need to do my homework before I facilitate longer chats. What I will say is, I'm happy to answer more questions. What I will say is that we will keep talking about this we're not working off that much information. I kind of expected when I initially was like, oh, this is a good topic for a live stream, I'd done like a little bit of research, but I thought there would be more, and it turned out all the research I had done is all that there is out there. At this point, there's mostly speculation. One, Biden is still trying to make sure that Trump will actually leave the White House, so there's that. So, it said chat disconnected, but it came back. Oh, you had grad student jobs with super weird hours. Yeah, grad student jobs are like, yeah, that's the hard part. So, well, maybe next Thanksgiving I will be a grad student in a country that doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving. So, I took the money I normally donate on my birthday and rented an Airbnb near a state park for 6 days next week. That is incredible. Oh, I'm so excited for you, Denise. That sounds amazing. That sounds fabulous. What kind of Airbnb is it? Is it like a cabin style thing near, or is it like kind of just like a regular flat, or is it a teepee? What are we talking? What are we doing here, Denise? Like, what's the fanciness factor of this? Love to have a coup. Nope. No one loves to have a coup. There's a website, I think someone posted it on the forums, but it's like a coup meter, and it tells you like how close we are to a coup. I think I spent up all of my coup worrying energy in like October and September when a lot of stuff was going down in Belarus, and like Trump was making all these, oh, well, we'll see how things go, blah, blah, blah. Like, I worried so much about that I think I used it all up. And now, while it kind of in some ways seems more possible, I don't have any worry left in me. I'm also trying to get a lot better at just, when things matter, when things affect my life or I can do something about them, then I can worry about them. But when they're things I have no power to stop, the utility of me worrying about them instead of worrying about things I can control is just not very helpful. So, if you need to funnel your energy in somewhere, and you'd like to help with the mess that is American politics, the Georgia races are hugely important because they will determine what the new president can actually get through Congress, because they will tell us who has a majority. So we don't get Black Friday as a holiday, so we have to use vacation hours for it. So I'm hoping to have work to do at home on Friday so I can save those hours and get paid out at year end. Yeah, that was originally what I'm not going to get paid them out at year end because our year is weird. I'm not going to get paid. I'm trying to make sure I have enough sick days because they're in the same pool for us to get me through March when ours get refilled. Like, I'm very worried that I will use up all my PTO and just won't have any to take for sick days, / work stuff. So I decided to donate over my own emotional well-being, and I'm so glad you did. I think that it is important to make choices to keep yourself safe. So, did I miss what kind of Airbnb it is? Did that scroll by in the chat? It's a guest suite that looks separate from their house. No, it's down at the bottom. I just saw it. I think it's meant for hunters, but full kitchen and private deck garden fire ring. Ooh, that sounds nice. Fire ring, very important. Latitude says that they simply no longer care. I know. It's just nice to just, like, there's like a limited expansion of energy that I can put towards these kind of things. And, yeah, so... Exactly. Putting on your gas mask first in the plane. The air mask. What is it? It's not a gas mask. It doesn't gas you. It gives you oxygen. What is it called? What is the mask in the plane called? How many of these videos have I watched? Hundreds of these videos. I probably watched like 50 of these videos last year. By the way, in case anybody cares, in personal news, I was in Singapore last year, in a rooftop, endless, like 47th story, freaking, what story was that? I don't know. I was in an amazing rooftop infinity pool in Singapore, and now I'm not. Oxygen mask. That's the word I couldn't think of. All right. Clearly we have gone past this. Have a lovely time at your cabin, Denise, and happy birthday, Amanda, and everybody else. Please, meter your own coup freakouts. That's my advice. The less you spin out about it, I think the better it helps with your internal, focus your energy where you can. And I hope if you are celebrating Thanksgiving this week, you have lovely food. And please remember the debt that Americans owe to our indigenous family and friend that, Thanksgiving just likes to gloss over the whole genocide part of that. So please remember that Thanksgiving is also Indigenous Remembrance Day. And I hope everybody stays safe today and has a good week. Please stay safe, wear a mask, pet a cat if you have one available, and hydrate yourself. Oh, Oro, important question before we go. Did you finish the 2 buttons? That's all we really need to know. I have like the tiniest bit of tea left. Yes-ish. Yes, enough. Perfect. All right. Well, I will see you all next week or some other time after that. I'll be here. Maybe you won't. Bye.